The marathon is one of the most physically and mentally demanding events in world sport. Imagine competing and achieving the highest levels of success in this sport without the use of your legs.
In Barcelona, and I saw these guys in wheelchairs, and they were gladiators. You didn't see disability, you see these powerful humans, and I remember looking at them and just thinking that I wanted to be one.
This is Fearnley, one of Australia's most successful sports people and one of our most decorated athletes with a disability. Pushing the Limits, as told through Warwick Green, is a captivating autobiography about Kurt's journey from hometown sport to the highest levels of elite sport, the Paralympics and World Championships. This vodcast will examine Kurt's career in relation to the sport delivery systems that enabled him to become one of the world's best track and road wheelchair racers. It will outline the types of competition he has participated in, his achievements, and the sport organisations and agencies that enabled his career. It will also reflect on the extent to which sport delivery systems are understood by the author and by myself. It is important to gain an understanding of Kurt's disability and background to understand the sport delivery systems that have supported him. Kurt was born in the small New South Wales town of Carcoar, population of less than 500 with not many sports facilities. He was born with a permanent non-progressive congenital disorder called sacral agenesis, which prevented development of his lower spine, sacrum, and partial development of legs. When Kurt was a newborn, his parents were advised to leave him in a home for disabled children. Such was the severity of his disability and the lack of knowledge about disability in country Australia in 1981. The sporting landscape for people with disabilities at that time was just as limited. Around 4.9 million Australians, or 19% of the population, have a disability. Their participation rate in sport is around 24%, compared with 60% for people without disabilities. Participation in sport for people with a disability provides many social and cultural benefits, better connections to community, and a better quality of life. Kurt's first form of organised sport was in high school, when his teacher and mentor, Mrs. Dixon, recognised his athletic ability and encouraged him to compete in wheelchair sport. She also organised for the whole of Blaney High School to participate in a wheelchair tournament to enable the students to get an idea of what life was like for Kurt. This became an annual tournament for the surrounding region. Wheelchair basketballers from the Australian team attended the tournament, and Kurt was fascinated. Mrs. Dixon put him in touch with coaches from Wheelchair Sports New South Wales. Kurt attributes much of his progression and success to his early mentors and to Wheelchair Sports New South Wales, who provided talent identification, coaching, mentoring, financial support, competitions and promotion, amongst other things. He played wheelchair basketball for a few years, competing for Australia in the Under-23 World Championships, but his passion lay in wheelchair racing, and he made it his goal to compete at the Sydney Paralympics in 2000. Competition is a principal service delivered by sport organisations. Different formats of competition are suited to different sports. For the purposes of this vodcast, I will focus on the wheelchair racing aspect of Kurt's career in examining the types of competition and major events he has competed in. Kurt has competed in track and road races ranging from a 100-metre sprint to the 42.2-kilometre marathon. His achievements include 11 Paralympic medals, 7 World Championship titles, 31 marathon wins, and 28 wins in other international and national road races, as well as countless national and state championship titles. The small population of Australia and its geographical isolation means that athletes must seek opportunities overseas to compete against the best in the world, and that's what Kurt did from an early age. Athletes with a disability are categorised into classifications based on gender and also on medical segmentation with other athletes who share similar physical and motor function levels. This is to try and ensure the playing field is as level as possible for competitors. Kurt's classification T54 is described as wheelchair athlete with normal hands and arms, no or limited trunk function and no leg function. Competition format for shorter track races is along the lines of a placement tournament, where athletes progress based on time and place. Competitors are arranged into groups for heats, with place-getters advancing to finals. Slower athletes are eliminated. For major events, competitors are seeded or ranked into their heats according to their previous performances. For longer races such as the marathon, athletes are eligible to compete based on rankings from previous performances. One race is scheduled and the fastest time wins. The scheduling of competition is influenced by availability of facilities, climate, recovery times needed by athletes, television coverage, and optimal timing for maximising stadium crowds. The timing of standalone marathons is based around the international calendar, and that takes into account the World Championships and the timing of the Paralympics. The events are spaced out to allow for recovery of athletes and to encourage the most elite field to attend. Timing of Paralympic events is also impacted by able-bodied events to either run wheelchair events concurrently or closely after able-bodied events. This is to maximise media coverage and crowd attendance. There's no one agreed definition of sport delivery systems, but it refers to the structure and organisations involved in providing competition to participants. Sport delivery systems enable participants to progress along a continuum of sport that appeals to diverse groups, encourages lifelong participation, and enables people to progress to their highest level of achievement through sport development. Sport in Australia is delivered by organisations which are grouped into three sectors: the public sector, non-profit or voluntary sector, and the professional or corporate sports sector. They include sport organisations and other agencies whose role is not exclusively sport. These organisations are categorised into the following strands. Government organisations operate at the local, state and federal level. Their main responsibilities include funding, facilities and regulatory or legislative frameworks for sport. The Australian Sports Commission provides leadership and funding for sports bodies and incorporates the Australian Institute of Sport, which leads high-performance elite sport. Kurt Fearnley attended the AIS. The New South Wales Government provides funding and programs, invests in facilities, hosts events and competitions, funds schools that deliver sport programs, and runs the New South Wales Institute of Sport, which also provides high-performance services to athletes, including Kurt. Federal government legislation through the Disability Discrimination Act requires that people with disabilities have the right to take part in sporting activities in the same way as people without disabilities. Other legislation, such as the Australian Sports Anti-Doping Authority Act, also govern sport delivery. Advocacy groups raise funds, create awareness, give advice, support and assistance, and generally champion the cause of a specific group. Advocacy groups ensure Houlihan's philosophy of sport for all is put into practice, where people of all abilities, ages and backgrounds can participate at their desired level of competition. Health organisations from local to international levels provide health promotion support and activities, research and development into things such as disability equipment and biomechanics, sports science and sports medicine. Education organisations deliver sport in schools via the curriculum and also extracurricular activities, such as what happened at Kurt's High School. The physical education and sport relationship assists transition from school to community sport. It forges links with local sports organisations and enables the dual use of sporting facilities. As his level of competition became more elite, Kurt Fearnley received media coverage and sponsorship opportunities, especially after each of the Paralympics he competed in. Sponsors include Invacare, who's provided him with wheelchairs and sponsorship money for many years, Top End, 360 Hour, New South Wales Institute of Sport, Australian Institute of Sport, and of course the Australian Sports Commission, which provides funding. I have listed the sport, government and advocacy organisations involved in Kurt's career in a sports agency matrix. Organisations that were the most pivotal in delivering Kurt's chosen sport and supporting him are highlighted in red, starting with his teachers and coaches. That's Mrs. Dixon from high school, along with the coaches from Wheelchair Sports New South Wales. That organisation has supported Kurt with coaching and advocacy throughout his entire career. Institutes and academies of sport at the regional and state level, where Kurt has been able to use facilities and receive coaching over the years. Government funding at all levels, especially the Australian Sports Commission. Kurt wouldn't have been able to do what he does without the funding he's received. The Australian Paralympic Committee and International Paralympic Committee, which facilitate the highest level of elite competition and create greater visibility for athletes with disabilities. And finally, the International Stoke Mandeville Wheelchair Sports Federation, which was the birthplace of wheelchair sports in 1944, and it remains the peak international body for wheelchair sport. Prior to this vodcast, I was aware of some of the different elements and organisations involved in sport, but I hadn't considered how they combine to make up a sport delivery system that's responsible for the success of a sport, and how that goes and affects the individual development of an athlete. Being able to study the journey of an athlete through the insights of an autobiography has given me a real example of how these systems work and the impact this has on Australia's collective success in sport. Prior to the vodcast, I knew very little about sport for people with disabilities. I chose Kurt Fearnley not only because I've always admired him, but I wanted to use the opportunity to learn about the structure and challenges of sport for people with disabilities. There appear to be similarities with able-bodied sport delivery systems in athletics, such as the challenges of being financially viable, increasing competition and participation, competing for sponsorship and media attention, navigating the government requirements and systems. These are all things that all sport delivery systems have, so they're similar with able-bodied. However, disability sport delivery systems seem somewhat flatter in their management structure than able-bodied systems, and that's probably due to the smaller number of participants and organisations involved. While this presents challenges, it also enables sports to respond more quickly, be more efficient in the way they operate, and to gain synergies through aligning themselves with able-bodied organisations. Pushing the Limits is focused on the story of Kurt Fearnley's life, which includes factors outside of sport. As an autobiography, it is focused on Kurt himself and his memory of life events, not so much on the organisations or structure around him. The emphasis is not on sport delivery systems in an academic sense, but Kurt does give recognition to the organisations that have supported him. Kurt Fearnley is a giant part of Australia's success in Paralympic sport and sport for people with disabilities. Sport delivery systems have enabled Kurt to achieve the highest levels of international success in track and road wheelchair racing. Sport delivery systems are the sport, government advocacy, health, education, media and sponsor organisations and structures involved in supporting an athlete's progression along the continuum of sport. Kurt Fearnley was able to progress quickly from school-based competition to the international level, which was made possible by the efforts of the individual people and organisations within the wheelchair sport delivery system, and that included those people who were so important to him, his teacher and coach mentors, Wheelchair Sports New South Wales, the Australian Sports Commission and the Australian and International Paralympic Committees. These organisations provided a wide range of services to support Kurt's development as an elite athlete. These services included talent identification, coaching, mentoring, financial support, competitions, facilities and equipment. Without these, Kurt's talent would not have been realised and developed.